In 2012, forensic researchers began digging into the ground of an abandoned campus in northern Florida. They were working from maps, records, and official documents connected to a state-run school that had operated there for more than a century. The records showed 31 burials in the school cemetery. But when the ground was examined, researchers found 55 grave shafts. The remains recovered represented at least 51 individuals. Some could not be identified. Some did not match the official burial records. Who were they? How did they die? And why had the state's records failed to account for them? For 111 years, this land had been home to a state institution for boys. Its final name was the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. The Florida State Reform School opened in 1900 outside the town of Marianna. It was created to hold boys the court system had classified as delinquent, difficult, or in need of reform. It was not presented as a prison. It was described as a place for training, discipline, education, and correction. But the children who entered it did not do so by choice. They were sent by courts. Some were teenagers. Some were much younger. Records describe boys sent there for theft, burglary, and other criminal charges. Others were committed for smaller reasons: truancy, running away, smoking, being labeled incorrigible. Once a child entered that category, the system had a legal route to remove him from his family and send him to the school. The label did not simply describe the child. It changed what could be done to him. The campus spread across hundreds of acres. There were dormitories, fields, workshops, administrative buildings, and farm operations. Boys worked, lived under supervision, and were disciplined inside a system that called itself reform. Over the decades, the name changed several times. The structure remained. From the beginning, Dozier also operated inside the racial order of the American South. Black and white boys were separated into different dormitories and facilities. Inspection reports described unequal conditions. Those findings entered official files. But at Dozier, reports accumulated. The institution continued. On one part of the campus stood a small concrete building with a narrow window and a locked door. The boys called it the White House. In official language, it was connected to discipline. In the memories of former students, it became the center of something else. Former residents described being taken there and beaten with a leather strap. Some said the beatings happened late at night. Some said they were carried out when other staff were absent. Some described being struck until they bled, until they could not sit or walk normally afterward. The exact number of beatings cannot be fully reconstructed from the available records. But the testimony became consistent enough and numerous enough that the building could no longer be treated as a rumor. For many who passed through Dozier, the White House was the place where the system became physical. Dozier was investigated many times during its history. Reports appeared across the 1900s, documenting problems with conditions, discipline, staffing, and oversight. The pattern was not hidden. It was written down. But documentation is not the same as intervention. A report can expose a failure. It can also become the place where the failure is stored and forgotten. People looked, they wrote, they filed, and the institution continued. In 1914, a fire broke out at the school. The boys were locked inside at night. Sources described the deaths of 8 students and 2 staff members. But even after children died inside a locked facility, the school was rebuilt. The state institution remained open. Over time, a cemetery formed on the grounds. The boys called it Boot Hill. Some markers were present. Many did not carry names. Some carried only numbers. The official records identified 31 burials associated with the school cemetery. That was the number the state's paper trail preserved. 31. But former students had long claimed there were more. They spoke about boys who vanished, boys who were taken away, boys whose names did not return to the dormitories. Some accounts were difficult to verify. Some were dismissed as memory, exaggeration, or bitterness from former inmates. But the absence of proof was part of the problem. Inside an institution like Dozier, the state controlled the doors, the punishments, the documents, and the explanations. If a child disappeared from the record, the child had very little power to re-enter it. For decades, many former students carried their memories privately. Some tried to speak. Few were heard. In 2008, a group of former residents organized under the name the White House Boys. They spoke publicly about beatings, abuse, and deaths. They gathered testimony. They pushed for recognition. They demanded that the institution's history be examined, not as isolated complaints, but as a system. Many claims remained officially unresolved. But the deepest record was not on paper. It was still in the ground. In 2011, the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys was closed. By then, it had operated for 111 years. The buildings remained. The cemetery remained. And so did the unanswered questions. Researchers from the University of South Florida began examining the campus. The team was led by forensic anthropologist Dr. Aaron Kimmerly. Between 2012 and 2014, they used ground-penetrating radar, historical records, mapping, and excavation to investigate the cemetery area. What they found did not match the official record. The documents had listed 31 burials. The ground revealed 55 grave shafts. The remains recovered represented at least 51 individuals. Some were identified through DNA and returned to families. Others remained unidentified. The difference between the record and the ground became the center of the case. Because it was not only a question of numbers, it was a question of institutional memory. The state had operated the school. The state had classified the children. The state had disciplined them. The state had buried some of them, and yet the state's own records did not fully account for who was there. Some deaths had explanations in the archives. Others remained unclear. Some records were incomplete. Some were missing. And for families searching generations later, the absence itself became evidence of another injury. Not only that a child had died, but that the system had failed to preserve his name. Dozier was not a single cruel staff member. It was not a single moment when oversight failed. It was a state institution built to take children labeled as problems and place them under a form of control most people outside the gates would never see. That control moved through courts, dormitories, punishment buildings, reports, and burial records. The boys inside the system could be classified, punished, disbelieved, and forgotten. That is the mechanism at the center of Dozier. Children inside punishment systems. And the silence that protects the system after the punishment is over. The silence did not require everyone to conspire. It required incomplete paperwork. It required reports to be filed without force. It required children to be treated as unreliable witnesses to their own lives. It required the public to believe the school was doing what it claimed to do. Reform, training, correction. Years after the school closed, Florida issued a formal apology for the abuses that took place at Dozier. Some remains were identified and returned. Some were not. Some families received names. Others received uncertainty. The White House still stands. The official records listed 31. The ground held more. The file remains open. Subscribe to Eidolon Ledger to follow what comes next. Share this with someone who would understand the question.